Welcome to PCB Chat, where we talk with experts across the printed circuit design, manufacturing, and electronic supply chain fields. I'm Mike Buteau, the president of the PCEA.
Today's guest is Wally Rhines. Wally is the former CEO of Mentor Graphics, and he is now the spokesperson for the ESD Alliance, which is part of Semiconductor Equipment and Materials International. Regular listeners will know that we host Wally each quarter, where he shares the latest electronic design automation data. The quarterly ESD Alliance report, I want to add, covers sales of semiconductor tools, PCB design software, related IP and services. It tracks up employment in the industry and many other details. So hello, Wally. I hope you had a good summer, and we're heading into the fall now.
Hello, Mike. We sure are. Hope you're doing well also.
Great. So today we are discussing the results from the second quarter 2024, which ended July 31st and were released on October 7th. So just when you think that the tailwinds might be turning against you, there is more life in them after all. I want to talk about PCB and MCM design first. In the first quarter, the April quarter, we noted that there was growth, but it slowed for the second straight period to less than 3%. Which is not bad, but not the high single-digit or double-digit gains that we'd started to get accustomed to. And then the second quarter comes along. PCB design tool revenue jumped 8% year over year to just shy of $400 million, and the 4 quarters moving average was up nearly 14%. And just to give listeners a sense of how far we've come, that's not only a record for Q2, it's up 26% from 2 years ago and 40% from 3 years ago. Wally, what do you have to say about all that?
So it looks like printed circuit board and multi-chip module design is still strong, even though it looked like it was weakening. I'm sure there are lots of other factors, certainly a lot of package design activity going on, and I look across the numbers and I find it interesting where that strength has occurred. But whatever it is, PCB's doing well, and the overall EDA industry is doing phenomenally well at over 18% growth compared to the same quarter last year.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah, the overall market outstripped the PCB sector. So it's really, again, sort of this remarkable strength that we continue to show now for several quarters.
I think another thing that was sort of remarkable is that Europe was up 31% versus a year ago, outstripping all the other regions. Clearly a lot of strength there in printed circuit board design tools and other related activity.
Right. Yeah, that's perhaps a bit, any region that grows by 30%, I think we can say that was unexpected, right?
Absolutely. Those are big numbers.
Now, looking just at PCB revenue, the Americas is now 4.5 times larger than Japan and twice as big as APAC. And from a 4 quarters average perspective, Japan looks like it's the only real lagging region, although it is positive overall.
Yeah. Japan overall was pretty strong in design automation this quarter, just not as strong in printed circuit board design. So Japan has been weak in recent times. Looks like it's picking up. And so it was back about the same level as the overall PCB was last quarter, but right on about the moving average of 3% or a little over.
And just to kind of support your point, I mean, if I'm looking at the broader EDA market, every major region grew by double digits in the July quarter.
That's true, and that's somewhat unusual. Usually, if one is up, usually there's one that's down a little, but not this time. They were all pretty positive, all in double digits. And if you look at the 4-quarter moving average, they're all about the same level of growth, about 17% overall for the various regions. Actually averages out to 18% on a 4-quarter moving average basis for everything. When you look at printed circuit board, its 4-quarter moving average is about 13.6% versus overall 18% for the industry, all healthy double-digit numbers.
And for folks who aren't in the know, the 4 quarters moving average compares the most recent 4 quarters to the previous 4 quarters.
And now we'll get a brief word from our sponsor.
Join the printed circuit board design industry's first meetup on October 9th at the PCB West Trade Show. Sponsored by the Printed Circuit Engineering Association and JITX, the event will feature networking and a special panel on generative AI. The meetup takes place at the Santa Clara, California Convention Center from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Discuss the latest trends, best practices, and solutions for using generative AI in hardware design with like-minded professionals in a relaxed and informal setting. Attendance is free. Visit PCBWest.com for details.
Now, if I'm looking at the line graph, services revenue is growing pretty fast over the past couple of years. I mean, it looks to me like it's almost doubled, although it's by far the smallest segment. To your knowledge, has there been any fundamental change in how that revenue is recorded, or is there just something else taking place in the marketplace?
No, I don't think there's any change in our methodology. But, services goes in cycles, lots of things that can affect it. Sometimes when you're coming out of a recession, you depend more on hiring services people. And when you're going into a recession, you reduce your amount of money you're spending outside the company for services. But, we're not not really in one of those. We did have sort of a general downturn in the 2023 period that affected the semiconductor industry in particular. But everything is back in a growth mode. And so that would argue if you can't hire enough people, go ahead and depend more upon external services.
Well, that's a good segue to the next bullet item, right, which is employment. And that was up again year over year. Looks like the growth slowed a little bit from the last quarter, but still with those revenues, I don't see any reasons for concern at this time.
No, absolutely not. The employment jumped 6.8%, which is up from the prior quarter, but and it's a big number, the 63,000 people. But if your revenue is growing at 18% and you're only growing your number of employees by 7%, then that's probably very good. And I think you see that in the electronics and EDA companies that report their numbers publicly.
Now, one of the things I've noted lately is how many new EDA companies there are, at least in the PCB space, and a lot of them are working from AI engines, right? They are software folks who, maybe have some experience in PCB or electronics hardware design, but have jumped in with both feet to software development. And it reminds me, well, I wasn't quite there yet, but in looking back at all the new companies back in the 80s and maybe even into the early 90s, that was a time, right, of industry exuberance, right? There were lots of guys that were starting EDA design companies. It kind of feels like that to me right now. I mean, I could tick off probably like 10 or 12 companies right now that have entered the space in the last couple of years. Now, I don't know whether any of these companies have started reporting to the ESD Alliance yet, but are you paying close attention these days to what's happening at the startup level? And if so, does it remind you of that period, 25 or 30 years ago?
Well, the only indicator that the MDM data report ends up showing is when we add additional reporting companies. We haven't added any, so I think the ones that you're talking about are still off the radar and will pick up as they get a little bit bigger. In the recent times, the last 5 years, the predominance of startups has been Chinese startups, although they're mostly semiconductor. But certainly in the last few years, there have been quite a few EDA design startups tended to focus more on integrated circuits. The thing I think is unique about what you're talking about is companies that are taking advantage of all sorts of advances in technology to introduce new differentiated printed circuit board and layout kinds of capabilities, or even tools for writing code. And that's great. Usually, if you have an industry that has a lot of previous data that you can use to statistically analyze and build models from, then it's a good candidate for a lot of the tools that are provided by virtue of artificial intelligence. And I think as we go forward, one of the key things is for people to start archiving a lot of information about their printed circuit board layout designs so they can get advanced insight into where they might have problems in a layout, or where what directions they should take when they have problems getting closure or difficulty with power or other factors they're trying to design to.
Well, that's great insight. I couldn't agree more, Wally. Anything else that jumped out at you this particular quarter?
Well, it was a strong quarter in the printed circuit board area for library and data management, well above the 4-quarter moving average at 32%. It was also very strong for the PCB analysis tools, and in about the same range, package design. The ones that were weak were schematic capture and then our miscellaneous category. So in the fundamental core tools, the analysis, the library data management, and package design, I think you would expect these to be ones that would experience the most growth. And indeed, the last quarter they did. And if probably on a 4-quarter moving average, they're also very strong.
Great. Well, Wally, I can't thank you enough for sharing all the details and the analysis with us, as always. And I hope you enjoy your fall, watch some football, enjoy the seasons changing.
Thanks very much, Mike. Talk to you next quarter.
Okay. This is Mike Buteau for PCB Chat.